Welcome to episode 57.
Hey, this is John Lee Dumas of EO Fire, and you're listening to Who Did That Voice, where we take an in-depth look at voiceovers.
Finally, warmer weather is here, and there is no better time than right now to book your vacation getaway with 3D Travel Company. Head on over to our website at www.whodidthatvoice.co and click the Book Now button on the left-hand side. They give a complimentary quote so you can get an idea of what it will cost to take your summer vacation. For a limited time, Who Did That Voice listeners can receive a Disney gift card for qualifying Disney and Universal trips, booked and traveled by the end of 2017. Hurry and book today so you can travel away.
Welcome to Who Did That Voice, the show where we take an in-depth look at voiceover. And now, here's your host, Trenton Larkin.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the show. Today's special guest voiced Pidge on Voltron Force.
It must be penetrating the Nexus through that hole. We can't take much more of that. I have an idea, but we need to find Vince.
Our special guest also got to voice Ed with 2 Ds on Ed, Edd n Eddy.
Exceptional progress, Johnny.
Right on! We're gonna have us a family, buddy!
And what do we have here? Well, I thought it was rather humorous, Ed.
Our special guest also got the opportunity to play Krypto on Krypto the Superdog.
Do you believe it? All we had to do is put a cape on you, and everybody thinks you're another dog. It's like you got a secret identity. What do you smell?
The boy I knew on Krypton.
Whoa!
It is him. Boy, did he grow.
It's good to see you again, old friend. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Who Did That Voice. Today on the show we have Sam Vincent joining us. Sam, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for inviting me, Trenton.
Absolutely. It is an actual pleasure and honor to have you on the show. Sam, the very first thing we always like to do is just to get a background on who our actors are and how did you get into the voiceover industry?
Well, I started out as an actor in high school doing high school plays. And then I got an agent at the age of 15. Mostly it was for on-camera work. I'm from Vancouver, British Columbia. And during the, mid to late 80s, Hollywood productions began to come up to Vancouver and actually Stephen J. Cannell was kind of one of the first producers to come up to Vancouver and start doing productions up here to save money and use our resources and our talents up here in terms of crew and actors and such. So I got an agent and I started doing on-camera work. I got my first gig at age 15 on Wise Guy, which was a show back in the day. I don't know, you're probably too young to remember that one. But so I started out doing on-camera work, and then around age 19, I got my first animation audition, which I didn't even know that there was a possibility to do animation in Vancouver. So I went out for an anime show called Dragon Warrior. That's one of the names. I don't know. I think it has a couple of other names, but Dragon Warrior is the name that I remember. And I played this character called Moku, and that was my first experience with animation. And then I moved on. I think my first prelay series was Bucky O'Hare and the Toad Wars, where I played
AFC Blinky reporting, sir. I've tested the jetpack.
so that was me that was my first prelay, and then I just slowly started getting more and more voice work through the years. One of the bigger shows that obviously people probably know me from is Ed, Edd n Eddy. I played Double D on that, and I did Baby Looney Tunes and Krypto the Superdog, and I just started to kind of snowball, and so kind of voiceover took over my life, and it's been a great journey ever since.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us, because we always like to get kind of the core of who the guest is on the show and then go from there. So I appreciate it, Sam.
No problem.
And this is totally off topic, but we're actually Skyping. No one's going to be able to see this but you and I, but I think your whole wall is covered in Star Wars toys. Is that right?
I kept the lights down a little low, so maybe you catch that, but you have a very astute eye.
I was just like, is that like a checkered pattern wall or?
No, that's all Star Wars action figures.
Fantastic.
Yeah, this is my inner this is
Sanctum.
my man cave geek room. I can't I call it a geek cave or a nerd cave more than a man cave. Uh, yeah, I don't really collect anymore because it just gets a little crazy sometimes, as collectors know that you can become an obsession. Soon you're going, oh my God, what have I done here? But back a few years ago, I started collecting when they redid the Power of the Force collection for Star Wars, and they were doing the new editions, special editions of
Yeah.
the original trilogy. And in the theaters, they started re-releasing all these figures and doing new figures, and I kind of got on board because when I was a kid, I couldn't really get all those action figures as a kid, and then I had this moment where I was like, I can get every toy I've ever wanted. know? And I bought all these toys, and now it's like it's great. Can I hang them on my wall? And I always think I don't know, one day maybe I'll try and sell them, but for now, I still like to look at them and have fun with them. So
Absolutely. Well, I'm a huge Star Wars fan myself, so that's fascinating. And I had a lot from that series, but not quite that many.
yeah,
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us, because I know I got to that point too where, when I was older and I started making my first paychecks, I started collecting stuff too, to a point where my parents were like, hey, man, you got to stop buying toys.
yeah. Well, yeah, it wasn't my parents. It was probably my girlfriend at the time was probably like, okay, so where are you gonna put all this stuff now?
Well, if
Like,
we
well,
move you into the living room, we can.
yeah. Well,
No.
yeah. Fortunately, my current girlfriend loves like superheroes and all that stuff, and
Yeah.
we actually had a bunch of this stuff in our actual room together. And I was like, "This is like my dream come true." My girlfriend is okay with this. It's pretty funny. It was pretty funny.
Wow, Sam, man, that's fascinating, brother. Well, I know my wife is a huge Star Wars fan too, so she totally digs my geek, and I love it because I love her and she loves me. So,
That's awesome. Great, man.
getting back into the voiceover stuff, you kind of talked on Baby Looney Tunes, and you played on the animated movie back in 2003 called Baby Looney Tunes Eggs Extraordinary Adventure, and you got to play Baby Bugs, Daffy Duck, and Tweety. What was it like playing those iconic characters in baby form?
In the beginning, it was a little overwhelming. Just even the audition process was like going. I mean, I think that it helped that these were the child renditions of the characters, so they didn't have to be, spot on, voice replicas of those characters, because you could bring, I was trying to bring the essence of those characters to these new characters as babies.
Yeah.
But it was a thing of feeling of honor that you can try and do such iconic characters at the same time feeling the pressure of making sure that you want to capture the essence of these characters. And it was, I mean, obviously, I think Daffy was my favorite character to play because he's just such a multi-dimensional, egotistical kind of character, but he's still so lovable, right? Everybody kind of sees the selfish part of them in Daffy and relates to that. So that was fun. And the show was really geared to a younger audience. Like if you actually watch the show, it really is like, how some shows are for younger audiences, but older people can really get into it too. But this was really
Yeah.
geared to kids. So there wasn't a lot of the adult kind of stuff that gets creeped in, like in the Looney Tunes. Those were definitely made for adults. I mean, those were kids. I mean, we all watched them as kids, but now that you go back and go, those are kids' cartoons. But overall, it was a great experience, and I kind of look at that in terms of my career. When I was in my late 20s, that's when I got that part, and for me, it was kind of like a defining moment for me in my career that I was allowed to kind of like tackle something like that, and it was a big moment for me, actually.
That's awesome, man. I really appreciate you sharing that. One of the other things you kind of dove into briefly, if people weren't listening quite intently, they might have missed it. You did play Ed with a double D on Ed, Ed, and Eddie. And what was it like playing on that show? I believe it ran for 9 years?
Oh, I mean, yeah. I mean, we had a lot. I mean, our seasons were shorter. I think they were 13 episode seasons, but it went on for a while. When I look back at all the things I've done, I think in terms of fan response, I've done a lot of shows, and a lot of fans have liked the stuff that I've done. But Double D and that show in particular, and I guess where we are right now is, as you know, so many kids that were watching that show growing up are now in their 20s. So now they're having this whole sense of nostalgia, going back to Ed, Edd and Eddy. So I'm hearing and getting a lot of response, especially on Twitter, where people are talking about, oh, you helped shape my childhood, which, doesn't do good.
Oh, I'm so glad I could shape your childhood. That's wonderful.
And someone else referred to it as, they were talking, oh, I like going back to the old Cartoon Network shows, because that the golden age of cartoons. I'm like, what? The golden age of cartoons? What are you talking about? The golden age, Looney Tunes. What? I'm not associated with golden age cartoon. Anyway, no, but it's a great show to work on. It's probably one of my favorite shows, just because of the amount of love and attention that went into the details with the characters and the stories. And Danny Antonucci, the creator, he's such a perfectionist, which can be maddening, but at the same time, you get a quality show like that. So it was a great thing to be part of.
Yeah, that's fantastic, man. I appreciate you diving into it a little bit with us, because we talked with Matt, who played Ed with 1D, and so he's a goofball, man. I love him.
I've done so many shows with him too. It's great.
Yeah, you guys have been on a lot of different things together on multiple occasions, and I was like, wow, these guys have really done a lot together once we started looking at having you on the show. So I was like, wow, that's awesome. That's very cool. Mm-hmm. Well, another great show that you were on was Extreme Dinosaurs, which aired back in 1997, and you played Steggs, who was a very intelligent dinosaur.
That's right.
What was it like?
I really scraped the bottom of the old pumpkin for that one. Being that intelligent. It was good, though.
Yeah. Well, what was it like bringing life to a dinosaur with your voice?
Well, that was one of the first... that's still pretty early on in my career, and I remember just, being glad to have a part. I'm always glad to have a part, but I mean, I was in the room with a lot of guys who are a little bit older than me, but are kind of the mainstay of Vancouver actors at the time, because I was still in my early 20s, and I had people watching really talented performers like Scott McNeil and Gary Chalk and I believe Lee Tokar was in there, and Terry Klassen, who's become quite a prominent voice director in town. And it was, I just tried my best on that show. I was just trying to do my little thing and keep up with everybody. And it was kind of a little bit of an initiation thing with that show, is that at that time we were all still kind of goofballs in the studio, and it would almost be like we would do things to try and screw up each other's lines. So like if you had like a particular chunk of dialogue and you knew you had to get through this thing, people would start to creep up into your face and get as close as they could and see if you would screw up the line and things like that. Good, clean fun, kind of like voice actor hazing in the studio. It was a good show though.
That's fantastic. So it was just kind of a competition to see who could keep it straight while everyone else was trying to mess you up.
Yeah, or crunching up the paper balls and throwing them at each other. This is kind of the early years before we starting having to get very, very, very serious and professional in the studio. Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing, because that was a great show. I loved growing up with that. And in that era, they did so many shows around dinosaurs. And
that's true.
They had Dink the Dinosaur, and they had Street Sharks, which was kind of dinosaur-esque. And, there's just a lot of different shows like that. But especially it seemed like all the heroes were like pairs of four. You had Mummies Alive, where there were four heroes. You had Street Sharks, you had Extreme Dinosaurs, and all those shows always seem to have or Ninja Turtles. They always had like the four bonded brotherhood kind of thing going on.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, those shows also. I think there was a different feel to those shows, and I think there was like this transition. Like, I don't know if you've noticed this, but with the older cartoons, like kind of from like the early '90s and stuff, the characters were always these big, beefy hero type guys with big voices. And I felt like I was like, I was always trying to find where's the geeky guy in this, or where's the like the smart guy, because I don't really lend to being the big superhero type of guy. And then there was this kind of transition where everything became so youth centered, and all the characters became like, you look at the breakdowns as a 14-year-old guy, 15-year-old guy. And it kind of shifted where the heroes became younger and younger and less about the big bulky heroes. I don't know. That I kind of noticed that anyway.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been a transition from the cartoons of the 90s and early 2000s to today, for sure. There's definitely been a shift, and I've definitely felt that as well. You know, another great show that you were on that you voiced for was Zoid's New Century Zero as Brad, the Blue Commando Wolf pilot, and you played the Dark Judge.
That's right. Yeah, the Dark Judge was fun because he was just like, no, right, he was just insane and loud. But then I liked Brad because Brad was like my chance to kind of do like that laid back Han Solo type of guy who was just like, I mean, he had the Bon Jovi hair going on, but you know, from the 80s, but he was just like too cool for school. And that's kind of, those characters are always fun to play because, you know, everybody thinks those guys are cool. You know.
Just very laid back and Mr. Macho and everything else.
Yeah.
Well, he was definitely a lone wolf.
Exactly. Yes, he was.
So, but I think the Zoid that he piloted, his character was very esque of that kind of lone wolf character, kind of like you said, Han Solo, kind of I'm my own man and I'm going to do what I want to do when I want to do it kind of thing. So,
yeah.
But yeah, and the Dark Judge was fun because they would always blast in on top of the white judges and then they'd take over and be like, ha ha!
He was, that was just like, when I did him, it was just like full tilt, you know, bad robot, just, you know, it was nasty. I liked it. It was fun.
Today's rules are, there are no rules.
There are no rules. Go! Yeah.
You know, you briefly talked about Krypto, the super dog, and I didn't watch that show all the way through, but I did catch it here and there when it started airing. It was aired in 2005. And what was it like getting to play the superhero Superman's dog, Krypto?
Again, it's kind of like an iconic character. I mean, it was not like, you know, it's still Superman's dog, but at the same time, I just liked I like the style of the show. I like the animation. I kind of had a classic kind of, I know it was Warner Brothers, but it still felt kind of Hanna-Barbera to me. And I liked all the villains in it. And, you know, going on these little, you know, with when Scott McNeil played Bat Hound and we would go on our little caper crusading kind of things. And it was a good show. I liked it. I like playing the hero. He was, you know, fun. I mean, sometimes I do a lot of the hero things, and there's always the plus side of being the hero. And then, you know, but some people go, oh, the heroes are always boring and blah blah blah. But you know, so but I loved Krypto, and I'm now, the best thing about it was Cartoon Network released this talking Krypto doll, which I have at home. I got to put batteries in it, but it's great. I press on his tail and there's my voice. I love it. It's awesome.
That's fantastic. I'm glad they actually used your voice, because I know a lot of times when they bring out toys, they actually have someone else revoice it. So.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe at the time they were, you know, I got a decent deal on it, and then so I agreed to do it, and so I did. So that's my actual voice. But there have been times where, you know, they don't really want to pay. So what do you know? It's somebody else trying to do you in a toy. And, you know, well, that's business sometimes, right?
Yeah. Well, it's great that you got to play Krypto. I loved the intro, you know, kind of had that comic book flair. It was real upbeat, real peppy. And it was one of those generational shows where it was geared for kids, but it was something that adults could watch too and still enjoy, especially if they were into the superhero genre and everything. So,
yeah.
Well, Sam, back in 2011, you got to play a multitude of characters on the show called Voltron Force. What was it like for you stepping into the shoes of Pidge, the Green Lion pilot, who had previously been voiced by both Billy West and the original Green Lion pilot, Neil Ross?
I was excited to be a part of a new Voltron series, and you know, I know it's always a challenge when you're gonna, you know, revamp something that's so beloved by so many fans. But also, I mean, the whole, you know, it was a complete new version. Pidge was nothing like the character Billy West played, so I kind of just put that on my mind. I mean, I'm not gonna try and create that voice because it's so unique to that character. So I just, you know, he was basically a teenager who's, you know, ultimately an uber tech nerd and the whole thing. So that's, you know, that was the angle on that character. But it was a fun show to do, and I was hoping that it was going to go. I know now there's another new rendition on Netflix, which I haven't really watched a lot, but it looks like they got a good cast on that. So it was fun, and I kind of had wished that we would have gone further with it, but it didn't happen. But I liked it. I thought he looked kind of cool. Like, he kind of looked a little bit like Ben 10 a little bit to me. Just the visual on him. Yeah, it was very. Yeah, it was. So I thought I definitely liked the character design on the show, and they did a kind of a mix of CG, and then traditional 2D looking animation. And some people weren't big fans of that, but I thought overall it looked pretty good.
Yeah, and I was actually kind of confused because of your show that came out in 2011 and then the new one. I didn't realize they'd revamped it so quickly, and so I was kind of confused there. But I have a lot of fans that listen to this show who are Voltron fans, and so they'll be super excited to hear this interview because they love to get any piece of Voltron they can.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Hello, Voltron fans.
Sam, what kind of advice would you give to someone who might potentially be pursuing a voiceover career?
Well, obviously we get this question a lot from people, and the first and foremost, I always go, I never set out to be a voice actor. I started acting in high school, and I started in theater, and then I got into on-camera work, and voice kind of, came out of all of that. So I think that, I think voice acting is always acting first and voice second, in my opinion. So I think that you have to. A lot of people go, oh well, I do a really good Donald Duck, or I do a good Popeye, and I say that's great. What you're doing is mimicry, and that shows that you have some capacity to manipulate your voice and change it and make it into different sounds, which is a very important tool to have in voice acting. But acting is still the required skill to have, and it's a very specific type of acting, and it involves being in the environment of a studio and working with a microphone. And there's a lot of these techniques that you have to learn through trial and error by doing it. And if people are interested in just getting started, I think that depending on where you are in this whole journey, first of all, get yourself, even if it's a basic microphone or even talking into your phone, get comfortable with recording your voice, acting into a microphone, playing it back and listening to it. Because I think a lot of people, the first time they hear their own voice, it's, people who never do this for a living and they hear their voice on the, well, when we had answering machines or whatever, you go, wow, that's what my voice sounds like. Oh, I sound so weird when I hear myself, blah, blah, blah. Well, first of all, you have to get over that kind of psychological hurdle and say, okay, well, this is what you're going to be doing. You're going to be listening to your voice, and you're going to be hearing it, getting feedback from that, and making alterations and working on it. So you got to get comfortable with that whole process. And also, I think it's good to this is homework. Watch lots of cartoons.
Dang it, that's so hard.
Dang, are you kidding me? I got to sit down and watch cartoons because the that are doing it for a living, they're the ones you want to, and I don't say imitate, you want to emulate them.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing, is that you have your own unique voice and your own unique thing that you're going to bring to it. But the people that are doing it for a living, they've got it down. They know what they're doing, and you want to try and learn as much as you can from listening to them. I think just getting comfortable with performing and expressing yourself is important in the first place too, is take some improv classes, get comfortable with performing, get comfortable with expressing yourself. So that's for like the ultimate in beginners. I mean, if you're going to take it to the next step, if you've already got some theater experience and you've been performing and you're trying to get in specifically into voice work, well, that, and we get into the business side of things. I mean, I know there's a lot of people who don't live in the main, industry areas like LA, New York, Vancouver, Toronto, and they're trying to start their career out in a city that may not be traditionally an epicenter for animation, and that's a little bit harder to do. I know there's a lot of people who are accessing the internet, using websites to start their careers by doing, freelance voice work for commercials and all around the world. And I think and I don't really know much about that world. I mean, I'm fortunate that I got an agent early on, and I've gone kind of the traditional route of have an agent, you get called in the audition, that kind of thing. So I think if you're not, if you're kind of working independently, you've kind of got to eke out your living through the internet. But if you really, really want to become a voice actor, you're going to have to make the leap to, somewhere like LA or New York, and, struggle it out just like everybody else who tries to put their demo tapes together, tries to get an agent, and get in there. I mean, it's a challenging job to get into, and it takes a lot of work, and you got to, and there's a lot of people that love it and want to do it too. So you got to work hard and always work. I mean, I've been doing it for over 25 years, and I'm always working on my stuff when I'm not in the studio. Even when I'm not, auditioning for stuff, I work on my stuff. There's always a new accent you can learn. There's always a new attitude or a new character you can invent, a new variation. And one of the great things about voice work is that I think that as you get older, your career can become more enriched and more full, as opposed to, sometimes with on camera, they're going to tell you, you don't need to put Botox in your head to, to keep doing this job. You just need to take care of your instrument, keep working on your chops, and you can actually have a very long, sustained career in voice. And it can evolve into different things, because there's animation, there's book narration, there's promos, there's all sorts of things you can do with voice.
Well, Sam, thank you so much for diving into it and kind of giving us a deep look at what it takes to achieve that goal, if that is something people are wanting to pursue. I've got 2 final questions for you, and the first of the 2 is, what is your favorite cartoon character from growing up, and why?
From growing up? Ha! Wow. Whoo! Well, I would say that I'm gonna have to go with Daffy Duck.
Okay.
I think Daffy Duck. I mean, if I look at the Looney Tunes stuff, I'm gonna go Daffy Duck, because if you just, as a kid, when we're in kid mode and we realize that Daffy Duck is Daffy Duck, there's no Mel Blanc. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's Daffy, and that's Bugs, and there's no Mel Blanc. He just created such a full characterization, a full character, such a full life. And then you get older and go, oh, well, then you understand the man behind the characters, and then you just listen to what he did with the way, the highs and the lows and the subtleties and all the different places he went with that character. It's brilliant. So that's one of my favorite characters growing up, for sure.
Fantastic. Well, I really appreciate you sharing that with us. And I'm sure it was fascinating for you to be able to play Baby Daffy, since he is such an iconic character from your childhood.
Yeah, I mean, it was great. I mean, I think that perhaps with Daffy and that character, I probably got to explore about 20% of the full Daffy, because Daffy, as a immature adult, he had these shades of darkness and selfishness that you couldn't really capture in the baby version. But I tried my best, and I did enjoy exploring some of those, for sure. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, Sam, the last and final question I have for you today is, what is the legacy that you want to leave behind?
The legacy? Oh, good question. My legacy. Ultimately, if I look at animation, and I just find that animation transcends everything. I just find, like, I've been, if I'm traveling down to the States and I'm going through the border, and you know how serious crossing borders is nowadays, the security threats and all this stuff, I can still, drive down to Seattle, hit the border, and the guy's very serious. He's going, all right, where are you coming from? And what do you do what's your occupation? And I go, I'm a cartoon voice actor. And he goes, what? Seriously? I'm like, yeah, I do cartoons. And for, they want so bad to stay in character and say, I have to be serious right now. And then they can't help it. The kid in themselves goes, so, what might I have heard you in? You go, I don't know. I did this little show called Ed, Edd and Eddy back in the day. You did Ed, Edd and Eddy? Oh, wow. Well, let's and they're,
Yes, very much. Hello, greetings and salutations.
I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Anyway, yeah, on your way. So it's. I guess the legacy part of it is just that I know cartoons put a smile on people's faces, and at the end of the day, that's kind of what it is meant to be. So if I, and I've gotten letters from people, and I've heard things from people that say, when I was a kid, I was really sick and I couldn't get out of the house. I couldn't do this. I couldn't do that. And all I had was Ed, Edd and Eddy, and I watched it, and that kept me going, and we had a part in that. So it is those little, that it's about, the joy and the warming the heart and that's all. It's simple. It's not complicated. So if that's my legacy, that I put a few smiles on people's faces, that's good enough for me.
Fantastic, man. I really appreciate you sharing that with us, especially the border crossings. That was quite funny. I bet those guys have the hardest time trying to keep a straight face after you tell them your occupation.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, because like I say, there's a little kid in all of us, and everybody, like you have to have a heart of stone if you don't like cartoons. You know what I mean? Like, seriously.
Absolutely. Well, Sam, it has been an absolute honor and pleasure having you on the show today. Would you please just give us a closeout today as Double D and Daffy Duck?
Greetings and salutations, everyone. This is Double D Edward speaking. Thank you for watching the show. It's been very... Well, wait just a second. This is my spotlight, and if I want to say something, I'm going to say something now. Oh, all right, go ahead. Thank you. I don't really know what I want to say. Bye-bye.
Well, everyone, I sure hope you enjoyed today's episode with Sam Vincent, the voice of so many amazing characters. And if you did, please find me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram by searching Who Did That Voice. I would love to hear from you. You know, a question you might ask yourself is, where can I listen to Who Did That Voice? That's an excellent question. You can hear us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, and our website at www.whodidthatvoice.co. Click the episodes tab and listen away. Well, everyone, that's all the time we have for this episode. Join us this Friday for our next special guest, William Daniels, the voice of Kit from Knight Rider, and Mr. Feeney from Boy Meets World. You won't want to miss this episode. Hey, do you ask yourself who did that voice? Well, if you do, go to our website, www.whodidthatvoice.co, and click on the Episodes tab. Choose an actor, pick their name, and see pictures from the different characters they've voiced in their career.
Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time for more discoveries on Who Did That Voice.